Welcome to the Pucks with Haggs podcast, a proud member of the CLNS Media Network. Make sure to hit subscribe to the Bruins Rinkside YouTube channel and turn on notifications for when a new video drops on the channel. The show is brought to you by PrizePicks as well, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, everybody, welcome into this 114th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. Thank you very much, as always, for joining us, for listening, for commenting, for sending in questions, for interacting, liking and subscribing on our various platforms. Thank you very much to you for all of that. We appreciate it, and we're just going to keep the hockey talk going for as long as you guys want to listen. So let's get into it with this episode. It is a Bruins mailbag, NHL mailbag, what I like to call a hag bag mailbag edition of the podcast. I'll be answering questions, going through some subjects about both the Bruins and at the league-wide level, and sort of getting ready for what's coming next in the next couple of weeks. Captain's practices will get going soon. Training camp will get going soon. The wheels of hockey are going to start grinding again pretty quickly after coming to a halt for the last few weeks. This is basically like coming up the last week, I would say, of complete dormancy for the NHL and for hockey in general. Everybody's still golfing and water skiing at their cottages in Canada, but that's going to change in the next week or so, and things are going to start moving. And even then, we've still had a bunch of Bruins stories. Credit to the Bruins Media Relations Department for making a lot of the Bruins players available to make sure that during this dead period, we have stuff to write about and things to talk about with the Bruins. And, Bruins players are sort of letting us know what's going on with them and how their summer has gone as we get ready for the regular season. So with that in mind, let's answer a few questions for this 214th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. The first question is from M Hall 3333, a frequent flyer on this Pucks with Haggs podcast. We thank you for your great questions, bud. What should we expect from Matt Poitras next season? Does he become a legit NHLer and produce with the big club all season? He's only played 33 games each of the last 2 seasons and hasn't shown much progress. Worried he's the second coming of Ryan Spooner in that number 51 Bruins jersey. Wow. Okay. I can tell you right now, I do not see Ryan Spooner when I see Matt Poitras. Like, Spooner had great speed, and every once in a while he would flash and show you something and make you think that, he was going to turn into, some kind of player, some kind of useful top 6 player. But I never saw consistently the level of mastery in a lot of different places that I see with Matt Poitras. Like, Matt Poitras, to me, I notice him almost every shift that he's out there. I notice him competing for pucks and winning puck battles, sometimes against bigger, stronger opponents than he shouldn't. I certainly notice him holding on to the puck and making plays happen and setting his teammates up for good offensive chances. I definitely notice him transporting the puck through the middle of the ice, something I think he's gotten better and better at. And really, for me, I wouldn't say that he hasn't shown much progress. I think he showed a lot of progress in the second half of last year when they sent him down to Providence and just let him play. Let him dominate the AHL level, let him become one of the point players for the Providence Bruins, where he was playing in all situations. He was playing a lot of minutes. He was playing with players where he could be productive offensively, where he scored some goals, where he got that confidence back that maybe at times had sort of gotten away from him at the NHL level. And, I saw his first year, I thought there was some stagnation to his development. And certainly there wasn't forward progress at every point before he got injured and had to have shoulder surgery. But I would say last year, you saw flashes when he was at the NHL level, but it was still, I think, too physical for him. He was putting himself in too many places where he was taking big hits. He wasn't in a position most of the time where he was going to be able to show what he could do. You'd see flashes of, him in 3-on-3 overtime with Lowry and Pastrnak. I remember that one like it was yesterday. And just seeing the skill level that all three of them had and how dangerous they could be. that's what you look at and see the possibilities with him. And I just think he plays with the puck on his stick way more than Ryan Spooner ever did. And he's sort of a more dominant force and a much more noticeable player, getting chances for himself and for his teammates than Ryan Spooner ever was, when he would kind of flit in and out and you wouldn't really notice him when he wasn't directly making a play happen or something didn't immediately happen with him. So I think that Poitras is entering this camp with a legit chance to win an NHL job in Boston and likely be the number 3, third line center. It depends on how everything else shakes out, but I think the possibility is there for him to do that. Now, do I think he's going to be a winger if he doesn't win that job? No. I think he'd probably go back down to Providence and he would be the center there, and you would expect him to continue to be a dominant player there and bide his time and wait for his chances and continue to develop his craft at a relatively young age. I think he's like 21, where he's just entering like the period of his prime of where he's going to be an NHL player. And you're just starting to see the finished product that he might be at the NHL level. But I am a big believer in Matt Poitras. I liked what I saw out of him in the playoffs. I thought he was a big factor for that Providence Bruins team in the postseason. I think he continues to get better and better. I think he's continuing to sort of figure out his offensive instincts and his risk-taking with the puck and the things that he does to make plays, balancing that with playing smart, not turning the puck over, being a good teammate, being a responsible player, picking your spots in game situations, like all the stuff that happens to you as a mature player, as you begin to grow into what should be an NHL player. You start to understand all these things and implement them in your game while also still having that and retaining that creativity, that aggressiveness with the puck, the willingness to make plays. I think that's all there for him. And I still continue to think he's an NHL player and a top 9 forward, top 3-line center that's going to be productive offensively, that's going to be a good player. It's going to be more of a setup guy than a scorer, obviously, but it can play that game. And if you put him with somebody that can put the puck in the net, he's really, really, I think, going to take off. And that's why I wonder if you're going to see him in more situations where maybe he gets chances with David Pastrnak. Maybe he gets chances with Morgan Geekie. Maybe he gets chances with Azaka or a Victor Arvidsson, or maybe he gets more top 6 looks. And maybe, it turns out that he ends up in the top 2 lines if he cements a job in Boston before it's all said and done, just based on his skill set. There's a couple things that I think need to happen for all of these things to happen for him. I think he needs to continue to refine and improve his skating. Continues to need to be more of a powerful skater, a skater that can chop up more ice every time he takes a stride and can, gets bigger, more powerful strides that get him going where he's trying to get faster than he gets right now. More explosiveness out of his first couple of steps. I think he starts to, you need to see a little bit more of that. I don't think he's ever going to be a speed burner. I don't think he's ever going to be one of the fastest guys on the ice, but I think he needs to continue to get faster and more powerful as a skater if he's going to even be dangerous offensively and be like exactly what he wants to be as an offensive player and a playmaker. He needs to just get a little faster. And that's where it's a slippery slope. If some guys make it from the NHL, AHL to the NHL, and some guys don't, is I think they can get to that extra gear or they can get to that faster pace and are able to play at that, where some guys just can't get there. And they're always the tweener that's either not strong enough or not fast enough for the NHL. I think Poitras can get there, and I think he's young enough to continue to add that like half step that he needs in his skating speed and his skating stride. The other thing that I think he needs to continue to work on, or that I've seen and noticed out of him, is just his conditioning and his shift-to-shift ability to play as hard as he possibly can and to really bring consistently the same effort and energy and production level and ability level to every shift. Like, there are times I thought you saw some really good shifts and you saw some shifts where it looked like he wasn't all the way recovered when he was out there. Some of that might have been because he was very young when he was in the NHL the last couple of years, and he's still not at that like prime peak physical place he's going to be in his mid-20s to be able to do all that. But I think those were the two things I saw that I most noticed. I think physically he's going to get stronger on the puck just from maturation, just from filling out as he's like at the age that he's at, to really get the man strength that wasn't there the last couple of years. And I think we've started to see that. And he's just a really competitive player anyway when it comes to puck battles, puck possession, fighting it out along the boards, like winning his share of battles. Like he does all that stuff. So there's a lot to like, and I don't think he's kind of one of those guys that is going to fizzle out and we're not going to see be a productive player for the Bruins and be a long-term guy for the Bruins. I still believe in him and think he's going to get there, and think based on what I saw last year in the AHL, he took a big step. I think he's making forward progress, and I think we're going to see that in training camp, but it's no doubt about it, no question at all. It's a huge training camp for him as far as winning a job, making a big push, and showing what he can do. And it's up to him now. And we've seen him have good training camps and good preseasons before. So we know, he can do it. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch him. And I think he's one of those guys to look for to really push for a job. I'm a big believer in Matt Poitras. All right, let's look at what we got next. This is from Mike from Stoneham from the Boston Sports Journal Q&A. I write columns weekly for the Boston Sports Journal. I also do a weekly Q&A with the subscribers there. Subscribe to bostonsportsjournal.com, and you can be a part of it too. I do answer some of those questions here on the podcast as well. This is from a longtime favorite, Mike from Stoneham. He says, "Hey, Joe, happy Friday." This was from the Friday Q&A. What's the thing you are most excited about for this upcoming season? I think this is a great question, Mike. And, I think there's been a lot of fans, Bruins fans, that have been overly negative. I think at times a lot of the questions I've gotten have been overly negative and pessimistic about the season and where they're going and the players they're bringing in and all that stuff. So I'm glad you asked this question, because I think there are things to be excited about with this Boston Bruins team. I think David Pastrnak obviously is at the top of the list. I think good health and the return of Charlie McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm to good health is towards the top of the list as well. A rebound season from Jeremy Swayman is definitely toward the top of the list, and I think something that a lot of people are expecting. And all these things, frankly, are going to have to happen if the Bruins are going to have a good season. There's a lot of things that are going to have to go right for this team. Even the emergence of Morgan Geekie as a scoring threat, as a shooting threat, as a guy that has really elevated his game and put himself out there as a top six player and a guy that you have to worry about offensively, I think has been a great development as well and has been fun to watch. But the thing that I am most excited about, the thing I'm most looking forward to with this Bruins team is the way they're going to play and not from a systems sense. Because then I wrote about this, the ambient attack, as Biz called it, when Marco Sturm was on Spinning Chicklets, and wondering if they're going to play the 1-3-1 neutral zone trap like the LA Kings did, and if that's something that the Bruins are going to be pushed into or choose to do early in Marco Sturm's run there, and going into a season where the roster isn't as strong as it's been in the past. Maybe they feel like they have to trap in order to make the best use of the personnel and have a good amount of success and be a competitive team. As they add pieces and maybe get to a point later on where they don't have to trap as much anymore. So I think that's a possibility, and I think that could be there. So I'm not talking about that, because if they have some kind of trapping style like the LA Kings employed the over the last few years when Sturm was in those coaching ranks with the LA Kings, not super excited about that. That's not a very fun style of play to watch or to play, frankly, for the players. It's not thrill a minute. It's not high event hockey. It's kind of, lulling the team into making mistakes and then counterattacking. But that's good hockey too, though, to be doing that. But like what I'm most excited about is the style of play as far as how competitive and hard this team is going to play and how in your face they're going to be. They were like that to a degree last year, and certainly they were like that when guys like Nikita Zadorov and Mark Kostelic were leading the way, and Brad Marchand was there too to drag them into the fight. But now you're bringing in Mikey Eyssimont. Now you're bringing in Tanner Jeannot. You're adding that to what you already had. Sean Corrali, I think, is a very competitive player. And you're bringing together a bunch of Bruins players that I think are going to be hard to play against. I love watching Mikey Eyssimont play. He is as Don Sweeney said, a pain in the ass. He is a hard player to play against. I always noticed him no matter what team he was on when he was playing against the Bruins. He definitely played that way when he was with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I expect him to play that way now that he's in a Bruins uniform, where other teams are going to be annoyed by him. He's constantly going to be buzzing around other teams, right around the whistle being blown. He's going to be pushing the envelope. He's going to be dragging the Bruins into the fight. He's going to be setting the tone physically and emotionally for this team. And he should be doing it in practice too. And I think that's something that the Bruins are counting on. And I think that's going to be fun to watch. I think Jeannot playing a really physical style and wanting to knock the blocks off of the teams they're playing against. Mikey Eyssimont pissing them off and getting under their under their skin, getting on their nerves. Kostelik playing that way if he's fully healthy and feeling good about playing that way. Nikita Zadorov continuing to play that way as well. You're talking about 4 or 5 guys now that are really going to be players that the other team has to worry about on a nightly basis. And that makes everybody else on the ice and in the lineup more courageous as well and willing to sort of like step up. And we're talking, we haven't even mentioned Charlie McAvoy, and he's another guy that plays that way as well. And will throw huge hits and will play physical, and other teams don't enjoy playing against him. He's going to be freed up to, I think, move the puck more and do some other things. But I think it's also going to allow him to pick his spots when he's doing that as well. And playing that physical style and throwing a hit to change momentum or just, really being hard on the other team. Now you're talking about 5 guys that want to play that way and will play that way. And it's 5, 6 players, depending on who's in the lineup on a nightly basis. And that's when a team really starts to get hard to play against. And there's more of a pack mentality with that hockey team. And it becomes difficult to play against them every time you're lining up against them, whether you're going to the Garden or the Bruins are going to your place on the road. And I think that just wasn't the case last year. And maybe the last couple of years, it hasn't always been the case, but certainly it was not the case last year, where there were times where the Bruins just gave it up when they were on the road and a couple things didn't go their way. All of a sudden, the roof would cave in, and it looked like the team just broke and gave in, and wasn't going to stand firm and hold the line and keep things from spiraling out of control. Instead, they would end up giving 7, 8, 9 goals on the road and basically letting it go. And that is unlike the Bruins. That is not something you'd ever seen before. That was a major problem and a big issue and a huge red flag for that group of players, that something needed to change. When you start seeing that on a regular basis, and like Don Sweeney said, they changed the coaches, they changed some things around, they got more conservative defensively and sort of like getting back to basics with defense and goaltending. And when you continued to see things like that happen, after you sort of stabilize things, after you change the coaching voice and done some other stuff, well, that's when you need to start changing the mix. And I think they're going to continue to change the mix if you see that, which I don't think you're going to. But I think the Bruins have clearly set a tone that like things were not acceptable last year and they need to be a lot better. And they've brought in some players that they expect to toe the line with that and to implement that change and to help facilitate it. Or I think they're going to continue to change the core group and change the people that are in the mix until they get it right and until they start seeing exactly what they want to see as far as the Bruins go and the Bruins style of play traditionally and the pride that they play with and everything else. That just hasn't been there. So I am excited or enthused to just see like good hockey and to just see a team playing with an attitude and some personality and have a team mentality and personality that and team style of play that is going to be much more Bruins like in appearance and the way it looks on the ice and the way it pours out, especially when the temperature rises in games. That's what I'm looking forward to, because I did not enjoy, just as a hockey purist, as somebody that enjoys the game. There's a lot of games last year that I did not enjoy watching, and it was the worst it's been probably going back to the post Jumbo Joe Thornton trade years, the first couple when it was really rough there for a few years before Zdeno Chara got there, and even Zdeno Chara's first year. They had some years like that too, where they were just giving away games and it's just not a good product on the ice. And that's kind of what you felt last year, and nobody wants to see that. So I think the response has been good, and I'm excited to see those players coming in and instituting a change. And frankly, I'm looking forward to practices too, because I think they'll be much more intense and harder played and executed this year than they were last year as well, which is another good sign for the team if they're practicing well on a daily basis. All right, let's take a break here and let you know about our friends at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Joining over 10 million users and get started today. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and you watch the winnings roll right in. It's fun and it's super simple. PrizePicks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. On PrizePicks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports. Combine your favorite hockey players and players from baseball, basketball, football, esports, and so much more. You can now win up to 2,000 times your money on PrizePicks, and they also offer Venmo, MasterCard, and Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. And in addition to that, for those of you listening to this episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, we ask that you subscribe to the podcast, like, and leave a review. For those watching the show on CLNS and enjoying all this hockey talk, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the Bruins Rinkside YouTube channel, where you can find our show and a lot of other great Bruins content with fellow Bruins talkers like Conor Ryan and Evan Marinofski. There's also the CLNS Media Network and Celtics All Access on CLNS, the NBA History Channel, Patriots Press Pass, and the Bruins Rinkside YouTube channels as well. Also, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the very instant a new Pucks with Haggs video, podcast video drops on the interwebs. All right, let's get back into it. Next question is from RNDC2. Hey, Haggs, hope your summer is going well. What is the best move around the league this year, and what one has you scratching your head? Well, I answered this on the site, on bostonsportsjournal.com. And I liked what Carolina did. I liked them bringing Nikolai Ehlers in. I think that's a huge move for them. And I think that is exactly what they needed, was to bring in a player like that. There's a couple of teams that did really well. I understand what the Bruins are doing. They're in a different place where they're retooling for the next couple of years. So this wasn't a all-in kind of thing. And I think that they're obviously reloading for free agency next summer, where there's going to be a cavalcade of hockey stars. They're going to be able to throw money at somebody next summer and bring them in. That would be significantly a significant add, significantly improve the team. I really like what the Florida Panthers did, retaining all their players and them taking less to sort of build the culture there and continue to take the run that they're on. Keeping Brad Marchand, Sam Bennett, Aaron Ekblad, I think that's huge. I think that is a massive accomplishment. And sure, 3 or 4 years down the road, they're probably going to be rebuilding. They're probably going to be in a tough spot. But like, if they win another cup or two, it doesn't matter. They're going to have been a dynasty and had a great run. And I think you needed to bring those players back in order to do that, and they did just that. So kudos to the Florida Panthers for spending the money and trying to keep the team together and continue to go for it. Couple of teams I did not like what they did. Pittsburgh Penguins. They signed Bruins retreads. They signed like Justin Brazeau and Parker Wotherspoon. I think those were two of the bigger signings that the Pittsburgh Penguins had. Bringing in, adding to a team that didn't make the playoffs last year. I'm sure Sidney Crosby has to be wondering what the hell's going on in Pittsburgh and what is he doing there and how much longer is he going to stay there if that continues to be the case. And you also have to wonder how much Fenway Sports Group is involved with that and like cutting corners or cutting costs, I should say, and sort of like being a more efficient business model where they're not spending every last dollar and, kind of running it like they run the Red Sox, where it's a part of their portfolio instead of like their main thing that they're like concentrating on and focusing on. And that's not a great thing if you want that team to spend to the cap every year to really go for it. Or if you're the Penguins, if you want them to kind of bite the bullet, make some tough decisions and jettison some veteran guys and sort of do that painful retooling that they have to do. The Penguins feel like they still haven't hit rock bottom like the Bruins did last year, and they're going to. Like, they're in that trajectory as well, but they just haven't quite got there yet. But yet they're still in a place where they're not making the playoffs, and they're kind of stuck in the middle, and that's never a great place to be. But nothing they did, I thought, in the offseason, in the summer, significantly change what their fate's going to be next year. The other team I look at, and I know they made some changes goaltending wise, which was definitely something they had to do. But I look at the Detroit Red Wings and I wonder what's going on there and how much longer they're going to have patience for what seems like an endless Steve Yzerman plan to reload and rebuild. Like it's been 5 years, hasn't it, or close to it, that he's been there and sort of building it back up, and they really haven't gone anywhere. Like they've gotten a little better and they've got some good players, but they're not making the playoffs. They're not making noise in the Atlantic Division. They're going to add to what's a difficult division for the Bruins to make the playoffs in for sure. And they're going to be tough. They're going to be in that sort of like middle to below to low level in the Atlantic Division. Buffalo, Detroit, Montreal, Ottawa, I think has escaped that, but who knows if they are going to sink back in or not. One of the other top teams is going to. But I just didn't like what they did, and I didn't think they did enough. And those are the ones I'm more critical of. It's not the big move that I didn't like. It's more like you just didn't do anything. And maybe Detroit is another one that's waiting for next summer and feels like they're going to make a big play for somebody. And, it wasn't a huge class free agency wise this summer because a lot of the players got retained. So you kind of have to keep that in mind as well. But, there are things I really like that some teams did. And there are things where it's just like, I'm not impressed. And, I liked the teams that tried to keep their players together and spent the money, especially if it was good players like Florida. Not so much for the teams that really didn't do enough, that are on the outside looking in, like Pittsburgh and Detroit. All right, this is from KJ Forbes 77. Hi, Joe. Seems like the Bruins have two young players vying for the same position as the third line center this coming year. Fraser Minten is more of the two-way center you want to develop as a long-term Chris Kelly, Charlie Coyle type who can play at both ends while providing some offense. Matt Poitras has the higher offensive upside, but not quite the two-way play Minten provides. In a perfect world, Poitras can maybe ascend to a second-line center down the line, but it's not a certainty. He would need the protection to have a third-line center minutes and matchups while he hopefully develops, but that would take away from Minten developing as your longer-term third-line center. Do you think one would move to wing if both make the squad, or is it more likely that maybe one starts the year in Providence? I don't think either would be served by playing fourth line, nor Poitras being pushed too early for a top six role. KJ Forbes 77. Yeah, I think that's a good question. That's a good kind of assessment of the situation. It's been very obvious that you've seen and heard the parallels between Charlie Coyle and Fraser Minten. I think that's the kind of player they envision Fraser Minten being at his best. They had him taking a lot of D-zone faceoffs in the playoffs last year. They had him playing penalty kill and tight situations late in games. And, they look at him, I think, as that type of player that can play that kind of role. And those players are hard to find, and you need those guys to win. I just wonder if Fraser Minten at the NHL level is going to score enough and be productive enough offensively to really be able to consistently be the third line center. I also think Fraser Minten would be able to play wing, whereas Matt Poitras would not. So if they both made the team, I think Fraser Minten would be a wing and Matt Poitras would be your third line center. I wonder, and I agree with you. I think Matt Poitras, you wouldn't immediately thrust him into a top six spot or a top two line center position role. I think you would want him as the third line center where you could protect him a little bit, and then eventually maybe move him into a different spot with more accomplished offensive players once he's really established himself and gotten some traction at the NHL level and built up the confidence in the resume a little bit. But if I do wonder if eventually Casey Middlestat is the third line center on this team, just because I don't know if he's going to be able to consistently hold down the second line center job. I don't know if defensively he's going to be able to do it, if consistency wise he's going to be able to do it. I don't even know if he's going to be able to score and make enough plays to consistently hold on to that spot. Just based on what I've seen. Like I've seen flashes from him, but I have not seen consistency wise. And maybe playing with Victor Arvidsson, playing with somebody else talented on the other side, maybe it's Zacha. Maybe that allows them all to really be a pretty good second line and produce and get the best out of all three players. But I also wonder what it would look like if you put Victor Arvidsson there, and you put Zaka there on the wings, and then you put a guy like Poitras at center who could make plays, carry the puck through the neutral zone, be the offensive guy center on that line. But then you also have Pavel Zaka, who could take faceoffs, who could be the third man high in a lot of situations, who could be the one thinking defensively and sort of maybe playing the defensive part of the role a little bit more, while you're letting Poitras play the offensive part of the center role. And that there could be some kind of hybrid between the two of those players where they share the duties a little bit and you get the best of both players and utilize their strengths. These are NHL players. They could work something like that, I think, pretty easily, and both players would be able to figure it out and work together as a unit. And that way you would protect him in a lot of ways defensively as well. So I think there's a lot of different ways you could go. I think bottom line, end of the day, Poitras should be a top six center, be a first or second line center, probably second line center, like a David Krejci type player on a really good team. And that Fraser Minten is definitely more your third line center. I do wonder though if neither one of them starts the year in that role. I think one of them. I don't know that you would see both of those players in Boston to start the year. I think you might see one of them, and then the other one goes down to Providence and keeps playing. And I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world for Fraser Minten to continue to get reps and to build his game up and to build up his offensive confidence at the Providence level, at the AHL level. Before he gets to Boston, and continue to be like the guy taking D zone faceoffs, killing penalties, like playing that big role, doing all that, the stuff that they want him to do at the NHL level, and really succeeding at it at the AHL level before he gets to that point. But it seems to me there's a strong possibility that you could end up with Elias Lindholm, Zaka, and Middlestat as your top three centers, and none of the young guys can push any of them out. And Middlestat's another one I don't see playing on the wing. I think he's going to be a center, and that's it. So some of that stuff really limits what you can do, how you can do it, what it's going to look like, who could win a job. Having both of those guys potentially in the same lineup. I think all that stuff, especially where they're not fourth line type players, all that stuff kind of throws a monkey wrench into it and makes it pretty difficult for all of that to happen at once. So it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if either one of them starts in Providence. I think there's a greater chance Minten starts in Providence than Matt Poitras, but I guess we'll have to see in training camp. So much is going to depend on how they perform and what they look like in camp and how they look like coming out of the summer. Like, a lot of stuff I mentioned about Poitras and skating, if he really worked on his skating this summer and improved it significantly, that could change the whole dynamic of what he's going to do, where he's going to play, what he looks like, the possibilities, the ceiling for him, all that stuff. So it's going to be really fascinating. I think it's going to be the most interesting training camp the Bruins have had for a while. Partly because last training camp was dog crap and was a big part of why they came out of the gate poorly last year. And I think that's a reflection on the coaching job that Jim Montgomery did. And just also the hangover from the Jeremy Swayman contract negotiations and just the unrest in all of camp last year and not having your captain signed to an extension. There was a lot going on, but it was just bad. It was a bad camp. You could tell that they came out in the season not ready to play because it was a bad camp. And then on top of that, so many jobs being open and so much being up for competition. This is going to be a really interesting preseason and training camp, the most interesting, I think, in a long time for the Bruins. So it should be fun to watch. All right, last question here from Mark Daniel. Greetings, Joe. If the Bruins were to make a trade between now and the start of the season, who gets traded? Could be a current player, prospect, or draft pick. For what? Take your best guess. Thanks, Mark Daniel. Mark, it's a good question, and I remember answering it. Boston Sports Journal. I think I mentioned Fabian Lysell because I think there's going to be some young guys that are not going to make this team, and that they've kind of run their course in Boston. And I think it was Mark Diver had mentioned on here that last year Georgi Merkulov requested a trade from the Bruins. He ended up signing back, and he's still with them. But that's an example of young players that feel like they've hit a wall with the Bruins and kind of want to change the scenery and to go somewhere else. I think there could be some of those at the end of training camp if they don't significantly elevate their games and beat somebody out and win a spot where they could be looking to try to go elsewhere. Either that or they're going to be stewing down in Providence and not happy down there. So That's the level I think you're going to see for a trade. I don't think you're going to see a major trade. I don't think you're going to see a Jeremy Swayman sent somewhere. I don't think you're going to see Pavel Zacha. I know his name has been tossed around a little bit. Some players like that, maybe a defenseman. I don't see any of that happening. I think the Bruins want to look at what they have here in camp and see where they're at and evaluate for a little bit before they make any big moves. But I think you could see a young player or two that maybe not happy with the look they're getting from the Bruins. Maybe they end up moving one of those players for somebody in a similar situation with another organization, for a draft pick, whatever. But I think that's the extent of it. I don't think it's going to be anything major happening. I don't see any shockwave type things happening as far as trades go for a little bit. Now, once we get into the season, I mean, it starts to get interesting at that point. Depending on how they play, depending on how some of their core players play, depending on where they're at, like contract status wise, this would be the last season you could trade Jeremy Swayman before his no trade kicks in. So if he doesn't rebound strongly and have a great season and really like put last year in the rearview mirror, maybe that's something you revisit or at least think about to get out from under that contract before you're completely stuck with it. But I think a lot would have to go wrong before it gets to that point. I think they're going to look at this team and take a long look for the first few months and then evaluate whether, they're going to trade more core pieces for more draft picks or whether they might be in the hunt for a wild card and they're going to add a little bit. It'll be interesting to see what they do. And then also you got to factor in James Haggs might be joining this team after the college hockey season is over and jumping on at the end as well. And that could change the dynamic also. So a lot of interesting things going on as far as that goes, and a lot of interesting possibilities as to what they can do and where they can go. But don't get your hopes up for a blockbuster. That would be my basic thing, is they're not going to make a major trade at this point. They put a lot of work into putting a game plan together to put the roster together. Marco Sturm has put together systems based on this roster. He said he wanted to implement something according to the personnel that they had and be willing to adjust with it, and I think he's done that. Now that hard work goes into training camp and seeing what they have and seeing how the pieces fit. And you're going to go into the regular season looking at all this and then seeing what worked, what didn't, and then making adjustments from there. But I don't think you're going to see a major shift in attitude, strategy, anything like that over these next few weeks going into camp. I think that would be more for the few months into the regular season based on what the product we're seeing on the ice. All right, that's it for this week. Thank you very much for listening. We will be back next week with a couple more guests as we start to hit the captain's practice portion of the summer program here. Welcome. Thanks for listening to the Pucks with Haggs podcast, a proud member of the CLNS Media Network. Make sure to hit subscribe to the Bruins Rinkside YouTube channel and turn on notifications for when a new video drops on the channel. The show is also brought to you by PrizePicks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to this Hagbag Mailbag edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. We will be back probably on Wednesday with a longtime friend and colleague, your friend and mine, Mick Calagio. Well, I'm sure we'll have some other guests as well lined up for next week. Should be some good chats. But for now, take it easy and see you at the rink.